All right, hey folks, this is Carrie here with Hannafin Marketing and PPC Hero to talk to you today about, uh, about social, why big brands care, and why you should too. So today we've got some special guests with us, and we're going to take a sec here just to do a quick introduction. First, we've got Robert Brady. We also have Mark Batanga on the line. And then we also have Tara Siegel, who actually has a little one who went under the weather today. So she is taking care of her little guy, and she may actually join us at some point. But until then, we'll go ahead and start introducing ourselves. So, Robert, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself. And also, my personal curiosity is how closely does your photo that we're looking at resemble how you actually appear in real life? Robert, go.
Yeah, my name is Robert Brady. I'm the founder of Righteous Marketing, kind of a boutique PPC only marketing agency. And we're out here in Utah. I really enjoy skiing when it's snowy and mountain biking when it's not. And as far as that picture goes, I would probably need a little bit of a haircut, but that was taken less than a year ago. That's very accurate.
Excellent. All right. Sounds good. And sounds like life in Utah is not so bad. And
It's
Mark, how
fun
about
if you are willing to get outside and enjoy it.
yeah, I'm sure that when it gets a little cold, it gets really cold.
Yeah.
All right. And Mark, how about you? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm the online customer acquisition manager at Hootsuite. Hootsuite is a popular social media dashboard, social media platform for scheduling tweets as well as managing multiple accounts. My team oversees customer acquisition and in the form of paid search as well as paid advertising and organic needs as well.
Awesome. Sounds good. And would you say that this photo of you that we're looking at is pretty accurate portrayal of how you appear in real life?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna need a bit of a trim, but I think I'm good. It's pretty recent, so me and Robert need to head to the barber.
Excellent. Sounds great. And again, I'm Carrie Albright, and I'm an account manager here at Hannafin Marketing. I'm also a blogger for PPC Hero, and I'm sure you've heard my voice several times on various webinar and video blog recordings. So I'm happy to help you out today and get some of these conversations going. And as far as that photo, that's more or less what I look like, but in real life, I like to think that I have a much more dynamic presence than just this photo. And with Tara, we'll assume that this is the real life Tara, and we may in fact get the chance to talk to her about it when she comes through. But she's the director of paid search at eBay Enterprises, which makes her a good resource for this conversation topic too. So moving into the topic, why big brands care about social, and you should too. Basically, I mean, we've got these top minds that work with social media every day that really have some great insights, great experiences, and can kind of help give you listeners a little bit more insight to what you can do to approach social, be it through Twitter, through Facebook, through LinkedIn, and other platforms. We really want to have some of these folks who are going to be sharing what they know with us at HeroConf this year, a little taste of what's to come. So, like I mentioned, HeroConf's going to be coming up in April. For those of you who already signed up, I'm super excited about it. I think it's going to be a really fun time. And for those of you who are considering it or not entirely certain if you're going to be going, I would definitely do a little more looking into it. HeroConf.com, our website. You should take a look at it, see what stuff we've got planned, because I think it's going to be a great event. And like I said, we've got some really great speakers coming through. So today it's just a brief glimpse into what we're going to hold in store for you in April. So while you're listening, you're probably going to have questions, have your own experiences, or things that you'd like to chime in, or things you'd like clarification on. If that's the case, feel free to tweet at hashtag ThinkPPC and give us any sort of questions that you might have. There's also a question box in your little webinar screen, which you're welcome to use as well, and then we'll address some questions at the end of the talk today. But again, feel free to engage through Twitter. It's a lot of fun to see what thoughts people have, what experiences they have, and then to go back through and see if there's anything additional we can cover in future webinars. So as usual, before we start, we're going to do a really quick poll just to get an idea of who it is we're talking with. So the question that we typically ask is, how long have you been in PPC? The answers are A, less than 1 year, B, 1 to 3 years, C, 3 to 5 years, or D, 5+ years. Now, Robert and Mark, you both sound like you've been doing this for a while. Would you fall into the category there of A, B, C, or D?
For me, it would be D.
Yeah, definitely.
So 2004, 2003.
I've been in it for 6 or 7 years, so 5+ for me.
Excellent. You know, the last webinar that I did, we actually had the great majority of folks coming from the 5+ years, which oftentimes when I've done webinars, it's usually between the choices of B and C. And so it was really fun to see that we actually had a lot of folks who were sort of further on down the line. But this time it sounds like we actually have 47% that are less than 1 year, which is fantastic, because that means we've got folks who are just learning this, diving in, signing up for our webinars, which is awesome, and really helping to expand what they understand about PPC, whether it be through Google, through Bing, and then also through all these different kinds of social media, which we've found, of course, are really important and great ways to reach out to people. Awesome. Well, the first question that we have is going to be directed to both of you gentlemen, and you're welcome to chime in with your responses. But the first question is, who should pursue social media advertising? And by that I mean, there are lots of clients out there, lots of businesses who understand that social media is an area of importance. They know people are constantly engaging in social media platforms. And so the question is, who is it that's going to benefit most from this? Or who are the people that maybe aren't doing it right now because they think it might not apply to them, but really it would actually be a great avenue? So Robert and Mark, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one.
Well, maybe I'll start off on this one. I think, for social media advertising, small businesses as well as larger businesses and enterprises should really look into it. From my perspective, it's still relatively pretty open and less competitive than, let's say, search advertising such as Google AdWords. So, for example, I'd say that social advertising right now is probably where people were at in Google AdWords 10 years ago, 9 years ago, right, when people were still trying to figure it out. So it's still kind of open, it's still fair game. It's not as competitive. People are still kind of finding their way through. Like as a really quick example, last year, a man who had flown, I think the British Airways, or his father had flown with British Airways, used a promoted tweet to kind of complain about the service, about lost luggage, right? So on one sense, it's like, oh, okay, maybe that's not the use of social media advertising, but in another sense, it's a testament to how easy it is to use. A person who probably, isn't very familiar with, let's say, advertising on that platform, right? So, and in another sense as well, the campaigns that we typically run are either content marketing campaigns, direct marketing, customer acquisition campaigns, or lead generation campaigns. So that's, a pretty wide gamut. Obviously we don't do e-commerce, but that kind of shows, there's different avenues. But also based on our tests, some social networks are definitely much more receptive to certain types of campaigns versus others. So that's the other thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and just my experience, I've worked a lot with the LinkedIn platform, and it's, like Mark said, it's very young. It's it's got a lot of things that they could improve, but has a ton of potential. And if you're, I think the real sweet spot for LinkedIn is the B2B marketer, and that's because their targeting is so focused on like a person that you're trying to reach. You're not bidding on keywords. You are trying to find a C-level executive who is in the marketing, who's in the high-tech industry and works in marketing. So basically you're looking at the CMOs, and you can reach out to them because you have that targeting available. And so for anybody trying to target these mid to upper level people inside organizations in a B2B sense, LinkedIn is just a great tool, and it allows you to reach these people in a platform that they're already on. And that's a lot of small advertisers might be like, oh, they're turned off by LinkedIn having a minimum CPC of $2. And really, if you're already running campaigns on AdWords or Bing Ads where you're seeing CPCs over $2, and that's a lot of even small businesses, then you can make LinkedIn work for you because it allows you to target people in new and unique ways even before perhaps they end up at a search engine doing a keyword search.
Yeah, I think those are both really great perspectives. I think that you totally hit it spot on with the targeting and the opportunities that you can get depending on what platform you use, and that Really the fact that a lot of these forms of social media are just, yeah, new in the big picture. The fact that 5 years ago, 8 years ago, we wouldn't have even been seeing some of these platforms really makes it a fantastic opportunity not only to jump in and really start helping make it work for us, but also envisioning what's going to grow and change over the next few years and kind of what opportunities we're going to continue to see in these different platforms. So, yeah, I think those are really great ideas. So another question that I have is, what is one of the biggest caveats or hurdles in your vein of social media, and how do you overcome it? And by that I mean, as working at a PPC agency, we've had so many conversations with clients about potentially working with Twitter, with Facebook, with LinkedIn. And there are times when they have questions about what kind of requirements they might have, be it technical requirements, be it maintaining your campaigns, things like that. And what we've found is really that a lot of those obstacles, while they might be a little scary to a client in just that initial pitch, there are a lot of great ways that you can overcome those issues and really be able to take advantage of the platform without being set back by some of these things. So I was wondering if you guys wanted to weigh in a little bit on some of the things that you've kind of gone through and really come out on the other side with some great benefits from.
Yeah, I can start us out. Probably the first thing that anyone using LinkedIn, their either their self-serve obviously the self-serve platform, is that you'll find LinkedIn doesn't have a native conversion tracking system. With your AdWords, with your Bing ads, with Facebook, you drop your conversion pixel on the thank you page, and it allows you to track your conversions. LinkedIn hasn't got that done yet, and so the first hurdle they're going to need is a way to track their success. But I've found that a lot of companies, they already have methods for tracking their leads or for tracking sales, and it's just a matter of doing a little bit of tagging. But there's one other hurdle that I think people may not realize. It's a little bit more hidden perhaps, and with LinkedIn, it's this idea of profile incompleteness. I mean, just for example, if you go into the platform, you start, changing your targeting methods. Say you target just the United States. There's 101.9 million profiles in the United States when I looked this morning. If you select just women, you get 44.8 million. If you select just men, you get 47.5 million. The problem with that is that there are 9.6 million United States profiles, that's nearly 10%, where LinkedIn doesn't actually know the gender. And it's pretty similar, not the percentages, but there's a similar issue with all of the different targeting options that are out there, where if you choose to select one or the other, just by selecting men, you've automatically eliminated that 44.8 million women, but you've also eliminated the 9.6 million profiles that are uncategorized based on gender. And so really you need to target people in in different ways, so that maybe they don't know their company size, but they do know their job title and seniority. And so you really have to kind of come at people a couple different ways, because there's a lot of inside the system where LinkedIn isn't quite sure how they fit in a particular targeting category, and so you need to target them in various ways so you make sure and reach those prime prospects.
I think that's actually a really great insight, and I think the fact that just using a little bit of just a little critical thinking and saying, okay, so what do I know about this? What are the kind of the holes that I want to make sure that I don't accidentally fail to cover? I think that's a great example with the gender identification, where if you just go through and say, oh, great, we're looking for, typically we're more successful with men, click, 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 that you might actually be missing out on something. So just taking that second, really thinking about it and saying, okay, what am I actually looking at? What do I not know? Where they fall within my targeting, and so that way I can carefully sort of build out those groups. That totally makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and maybe I'll add on to that as well. I think from the Facebook and Twitter perspectives, one of the things that I just have learned really about these platforms is content is very, very important, right? Like let's take a step back. if you were in display advertising or banner advertising campaigns, you set your creative once and you let it go for probably 4 weeks, a quarter, right? So a bit of set and forget it, if you would, right? With search engine marketing, you test text ads, but essentially, if a text ad works, you can let it run into perpetuity, right? The major difference between Facebook and Twitter is you can't do that, right? There's what we've found is, at least with the campaigns that we've run, we've experienced what we call internally, click-through decay, which means, for example, in Facebook, where we advertise in newsfeed ads, the more likes and shares that it gets, essentially your ad is then shown and spread to less targeted users. So imagine you created an audience or targeting for a particular campaign, and then it starts to resonate with that audience, and they start sharing it. And the example I like to use is they start sharing it with their grandmother, right? And then those folks start seeing it, and the impressions start piling up, and then the click-throughs start declining. That's one of the things that we've just generally found there, and that's the way we overcome that is with a higher rotation of new campaigns with new content. Essentially, you need a new influx of content all the time to kind of reset that, so that you're always presenting to the target audience that you really wanted, and kind of keep it as tight as you can.
In kind of hearing some of the examples you're giving here and talking about how Facebook, requires that sort of constant upkeep, I was thinking about how I just recently heard on the radio a story about a senior citizen community that was getting some specialized training on signing up for Facebook and them understanding how to, set their profiles and give their information and things like that. I think that's a perfect example of what you're talking about, where the demographic is changing, people's engagement is changing, people's understanding of what they're doing, on platforms like Facebook is constantly changing. And so being able to make sure that you're, a part of that is a really big part of finding success with some of these platforms.
Yeah, I think what's, just to add on to that as well, you have to, as marketers, take a step back and really look at the usage and behavior of these different social platforms, right? Like, for example, with Twitter, in some of our tests, we see a really tremendous initial spike of interest and retweets and traffic from the initial go, but then it subsides beyond, let's say, the day or so. And so, and that's the nature of Twitter, right? So, you also have to think about it as, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Yes, they're social networks and they're social advertising platforms, but don't treat users the same way across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think that's a really good point. And I think, because we know that people come to these different platforms for different reasons, and of course from different backgrounds, there's going to be all sorts of different engagement that we want to be able to really call out through each of our different ways of approaching them. Well, another question that I've got for you guys, it's a more broad question. It's just towards case studies or your personal favorite tricks. So I know that each of you have sort of specialized or have a particular specialty in a platform. And so if you guys have just either something that is a really great way to engage with your platform, or something that's happened that's been really successful that you feel like is a really good demonstration of what this form of social media is capable of, I would love to hear it. It sounds like you both have some great experiences.
Maybe I'll start off on this. For Facebook, one of the things that we do is we don't just measure the success of our customer acquisition campaigns through click-through conversions. So a bit of context, the Facebook campaigns that we're running, aside from remarketing and such, is really customer acquisition related. So it's not necessarily content marketing pieces or trying to grow our audience. We're specifically using campaigns to acquire new customers through our software as a service product, right? So when we look at these campaigns through just click-through conversions, they may not be successful on paper, but when we start, taking a look at view-through conversions as well, it's a tremendous platform, and it's very difficult to argue that view-through conversions don't work because, for example, we've run campaigns through a platform called Quantcast, and has very detailed metrics. And some of the metrics that we see on view-through conversions happen literally within minutes of viewing an impression of one of our ads without clicking. So it's hard to argue that impressions and view-throughs don't contribute to conversions when there are that kind of metrics available that tell you wow, okay, after actually visually seeing the ads, but not clicking through, someone's converting within an hour's time, 5 minutes time, right?
Yeah, I think that that makes a lot of sense. Actually, Mark, I'm going to ask you to speak up a little bit more on this response, but I really like that you're talking about engaging in more than just the straight metrics that you're seeing in like, the Facebook interface or the interface that you're provided through your platform of choice, but actually looking at it in the bigger picture and how you can interact with them more in the bigger outreach. And I think that view through conversions is actually something that I know the PPC Hero blog talks about a lot, and talks about kind of, what do you do with those? How do you let those weigh in? And I think that kind of what you're saying about looking at it from more than just the interface's perspective can actually help you understand that better. Is that about right?
Yeah, pretty much. And Facebook does have these metrics available, and it's just a matter of what your sales cycle is. So, for example, the sales cycle that we have for our small business product is typically, the sales cycle is typically less than a couple days. For some other enterprises, it may be, several days or a couple of weeks. So it really depends on what your sales cycle and what the view through conversion window that you're willing to attribute.
Cool. Well, that sounds like a really good way to kind of combine what you're seeing and what you're doing with what you actually want to get, and also kind of get some insights into how you can grow things, how you can further understand your market and things like that. So that sounds great.
With the LinkedIn platform, if our attendees only get one thing from everything I say, it's this phrase: layer your targeting. In LinkedIn, you have, obviously 200 plus million profiles in there. It's a large potential audience. And what you'll find is that a lot of the targeting options tend to be really broad. I mean, you have 150 industries in there. You have, potentially thousands of different skills that you can target. You have thousands upon thousands of different groups. You have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of job titles. And so all of these have varied levels of specificity, but when you really start to succeed and know who you're reaching with that advertising is when you start layering 2 or 3 of these targeting methods. And so you can target the high-tech industry, but then when you layer on top of that a seniority level, say that your particular offering works best with a director, manager level person in the company, and then you say, like, okay, inside of a company in the high-tech industry, who has director and manager titles? I mean, you've got your director of marketing, you've got a director of sales, you've got potentially your IT manager. They're across, so if that's who you're targeting, you're going to get those people, but really, who does your product appeal to? Oh, say that it's something that you want to reach sales and marketing. Then you go in and you add a third layer of not only the industry and the seniority level, but then you say, okay, I want the function, I want people in the functional areas of sales and marketing. And so at that point, you know that you're reaching people in the high-tech industry that are director and manager level and that are in sales and marketing. That way you know that you're getting the right, you can have an ad copy and an image that matches that person. You can send them to a page that matches that person. It speaks to their needs, speaks to their pains, shows what you can do to solve the problem that they're facing. And so really that's the key to succeeding in LinkedIn, is layering that targeting so that you're reaching specific people, getting them precise, relevant messaging, and then on the back end ensuring that you're tracking that so that you can see, okay, our cost per lead is really great at the manager director level. It's not real great at the VP CXO level. And then you can follow those people through your funnel, and maybe that cost per lead is justified when it's a higher person in the organization because those people are more likely to buy down the line. And so if you've layered that, you've targeted specifically, and you're tracking it, that allows you to really optimize what you're doing for the best results.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I love about LinkedIn is how, because of the nature of LinkedIn, people are encouraged to share so much information about their own skills, their own positions, their roles, their affiliates, all these different things. And for them, I mean, being a member of LinkedIn, that's something that you is really advantageous when you're trying to reach out with people in your industry and things like that. So it just gives us so much really good quality self-reporting to kind of associate with our targeting. So I think that's great.
Yeah, and really one of the things I've found interesting is, CXO means it's all C-level executives, right? If you target CXO and then layer in the marketing job function, you're targeting the CMO very specifically. You can do that for the CTO, the CIO, the COO. You just target the functional area along with that C level, and you can reach guys in an organization that have, they've got a gatekeeper in real person that you may never get through. They're probably, they may never actually go to a search engine and type in a search for a product. They have people who do that for them, but they're on LinkedIn, they're networking with their other CEO buddies, and you can put your ads right there in front of them at a great time, and really there's not a lot of competition in LinkedIn right now.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that's great. So it sounds like our takeaway from your portion of this answer is lots of layering, and then also that real life you has much shorter hair than the photo. So those are the two highlights we'll be sure to hit on.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, one more question that I've got um, would be, what has marketing in a particular social medium? It sounds like you guys, you both have your areas of higher specialty or interest, but what has marketing in this particular social medium taught you about your business? So not necessarily how to optimize your Facebook advertising or optimize your, Twitter ads, things like that, but really, what have you gotten from a bigger picture? I know I've touched on this just a little bit, but I think that this is really one of the biggest selling points about some of these different platforms is that there are so many more things that you can bring in a way that you don't get that data from just traditional paid search through Google or Bing or something.
I'll go ahead and I'll take that one first. Really, I'm a huge fan of using personas in your marketing so that you kind of have an idea of who you're trying to reach, who that person is, what their needs are, and what your product or service does to solve the problems that they have. And with a lot of your keyword-based paid search tools and platforms, you don't, you use keywords that you think match with the persona, but really there's a lot of crossover because, the different personas, even though they're different people, when they get to a search engine, they kind of tend to think about what their problem is in the same way. And so it's very fuzzy. One of the benefits that you get with these, with these social platforms, especially LinkedIn, is that vast amount of demographic data, especially related to their occupation, that can help you to actually validate those personas that you have so that you can actually see, like, okay, we think that we have these three personas, and you can target them, and you know that your ads are reaching those people based on the factors that you have included in your persona descriptions, and then you can actually measure how well those personas do. Because what what I've often seen is that a client will have kind of the ideal persona, like the person that group where it is exactly who they think they're trying to get to every time, and that those are the best people. And invariably, as we start advertising, we branch out beyond that kind of one ideal persona into some other related ones, and we start to find areas that actually perform better than their ideal, but they had just kind of gotten a little bit of tunnel vision where they thought, okay, this is the guy that we want to reach in every company. And they start to see that there are other people in the organization who are more valuable to influence and to reach out to. And so, the demographic information allows you to not only target the personas, but to learn how valuable those personas really are, so that you get a much better idea of, like, okay, this is the person we need to be reaching out to. And then once you've learned that and you've validated that persona on one platform, then you can broaden it out and think, okay, I mean, could we email the people that fit this requirement on our email list? Can we reach out to these people on Twitter? Can we reach them via Facebook? What are the other ways? Are there trade shows that reach this new category better than the ones that we've been attending? It really can inform and help guide the other parts of the other channels that your company has, because you've used the data to prove out the hypothesis, and it allows you to act more intelligently on that information.
Yeah, Robert, I totally agree with you on that. I think that sort of as we've been talking about how social media has been growing and changing, and it's something that we wouldn't have even had, necessarily 10 or 15 years ago. I think that knowing that it is important to be ready to adapt and to expand kind of how you consider your targeted audience, I think that that's, and just an incredibly important part of what we're doing and how we do it. So I think that your opinion on that is something that I hope a lot of people kind of resonate with. And Mark, how about you? What would you say is something that you've been able to take away from using social media that's been important for your businesses?
I think one of the things that we have to remember is that path of least resistance is something that really kind of resonates with me when we take a look at social media advertising. Is that customers will use any means possible to try to contact you, and so marketers are typically very I would say focused on obviously trying to get the results that they're trying to get with their advertising campaigns. But one of the things you have to also remember is these social networks and social media advertising gives your customers an avenue to contact you, and so you need to be prepared to do that. For example, in Facebook newsfeed ads, folks can comment on our advertising, and sometimes they'll have comments where they have questions about our products. So those are kind of things that marketers need to be prepared to triage and handle, so that you just don't ignore them, right? That's one of the things we learned. The other thing that we learned is it's really great. It really validates how much love there is for our brand and our product, and you, when you advertise on Facebook and you see that it resonates with the audience immediately when you put it out there, it just helps validate. Wow, there's a lot of people that not only like your product, but just in case something does go awry, those very same people are going to come to your rescue and kind of advocate for you, right? So those are just a couple of things.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that like what's been a lot of fun is being able to introduce your clients to a Twitter presence, for example, that they may not have known they even had. That, if that's something that they've never really engaged in, and then you say, actually, here are so many people who have, been talking about your brand, and it's a market that's right there waiting for you that you just need to jump in and get involved in. Well, I wanted to check in with you guys about some upcoming stuff. I know that we do a lot of, especially at the end of the year and at the very beginning of the year, talking about what do you think is coming down the pike as far as advances that are being made, new platforms that we may not even be thinking about, like things like Instagram, and some people use Pinterest and things like that, and with a marketing spin on it, saying this is something that I think we might be seeing soon, or just demands that folks who use LinkedIn, who use Facebook and Twitter and all these different areas are saying, this is what we want. And if we're able to get this, it's going to help us invest that much more heavily in it. So as far as in the coming year of social media, do you guys have anything on your list that you're hoping to see in the next few months?
Maybe I'll take this one. I think back again, full circle to my comment that I made initially is Google has had a head start from an advertising sense compared to Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And so really what I'm really looking forward to is just further maturation of these platforms as digital marketers who use, for example, search engine marketing. We've grown accustomed to so many different features, and you take other advertising platforms such as Facebook and Twitter and such, and those are the kind of things that you expect out of other advertising platforms as well. So really just a general maturation of the targeting features as well as the reporting, quite frankly. Those are things that will eventually come as more users adopt social media advertising.
I think that a big part of the Mark hit the nail right on the head. These social platforms are, seemingly less sophisticated, and they don't have the same amount of options that we're used to in the more mature platforms like Google AdWords. But really, our expectations are quite high. AdWords has had 10 plus years to get there, and we're expecting Facebook and Twitter in 2 or 3 years to reach the same level of sophistication. And while I think that their learning curves aren't going to be as bad, um, you're going to see a lot of maturation. I know in the LinkedIn interface is something that's frustrating for a lot of people. I think that we'll see some big improvements there, and I would really anticipate that the kind of native conversion tracking is a high priority for them and something that we could look forward to seeing this year, hopefully. But really, all of these social media platforms, if they're free, if they've got a lot of users and they don't have ads, monetization will happen. That's the only way that these companies can continue to exist and support the large user base is by monetizing somehow, because investment money can only get you so far. And so if there's something new and hot that gets bought by Facebook for a few $1 billion that doesn't have a lot of monetization, look for increased monetization, because that's what these big companies are all about at this point. I mean, Facebook, sure, they're trying to get another 5 billion users, but really, how much revenue can they get out of their current 1.2 billion users is probably more what their shareholders are interested in seeing immediately, and that puts a lot of pressure on them.
Yep, I totally agree with that. And I like the sort of tossing in that, as we see Facebook making investments in new things, when I heard about that, my initial thought was, how we see that come through in PPC, because I can only expect that we'll see some sort of translation of what we've been doing in Google and Bing for so long into, new platforms, improved platforms. And as they give us more of the familiar types of manageability that we've been using, in the Bing editor and Google's editor, things like that, when we actually can get to those, like with Facebook's Power Editor rolled out, being able to kind of feel more comfortable with that and feel like it's in our hands to build these things and move these things in a way that we're familiar with. I think that's going to continue to encourage people to do it and help them feel really comfortable doing it. So the other question on this slide is, what are you looking forward to at HeroConf? So that's coming up in April in Austin, Texas, which, as somebody who is extremely enthusiastic about warm weather and food, I am really looking forward to it. I mean, of course, this conference I think is going to be great. We have so many people on the lineup that I'm really excited to hear. But I want to know if you guys had anything in particular that you were looking forward to specifically this coming month.
This is something that I've believed about Hero Conference since for the first year in Indianapolis and also last year in Austin, is that the PPC industry is very there's a camaraderie that I haven't experienced in other areas of the internet marketing world. And when you get a chance to talk face-to-face with people that are in different industries and at different companies that are doing things a little bit differently, people are actually quite open, and they'll share with you, tips and tricks, things that they're doing that are succeeding, problems that they've faced that you could avoid, and that the openness and sharing is really refreshing to me. And it's something that you get that many people all passionate about the same thing in the same place, interacting. A lot of great comes of that, and it's something that I really love. That's why I always make a point to be at Hero Conference. And then, I mean, come on, it's Austin. Great town, great music scene, great food, great weather. As far as a place that I, quote unquote, have to go, it's pretty nice.
Well, yeah, I haven't been to Austin myself, but I've heard a lot of great things. So aside from HeroConf, I'm looking forward to the barbecue out there. But at HeroConf, I agree with Robert. There's some great lineup of speakers. I'm anticipating some great attendees as well, and there's some really great panels and presentations scheduled. But most of all, I'm really looking forward to meeting some really sharp folks in various industries. You know, just whether you're in e-commerce or in lead gen or in customer acquisition, you know, it's always good to talk to folks that are in different disciplines, if you would, because you can always pick up new tips and tricks and strategies. And as Robert said, you know, it's a very close-knit community, and it's a very generous community as well with some of their knowledge and insight. So that's what I'm really looking forward to as well.
That's excellent. I agree with both of you that I think that just that the PPC community seems to sort of let go of some of that competition of, you know, trying to outsmart each other, come up with the next strategy, come up with the next best practice, but really saying, you know, what are we all learning? What can we all do to challenge ourselves personally in our, you know, our own accounts and our own development in the industry? And I love that, you know, HeroConf is a chance for us actually to all get in the same room, in the same building, and have these conversations where we get to share those experiences we've had, and, you know, the highs or lows, or, you know, warnings or successes we've had. I love that we all get to kind of talk about that and eat some tasty food at the same time. So speaking of HeroConf, we figured that we might as well give you guys a chance to talk a little bit about just the topic that you're going to be discussing at HeroConf. And maybe just, I know that we've got your discussion titles here, but just give us an idea of what is it you're going to cover that day. And maybe if someone is in attendance and they think you sound just really impressive and amazing, maybe what's something that they can kind of strike up a conversation with you about if they're trying to kind of get in and talk to Robert Brady or Mark Rutanga.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be speaking on the LinkedIn platform and really letting people know that there are different ways to go about it, and that there's a lot of ways to succeed. And the link, you know, just really highlighting the potential of the LinkedIn platform and how they can use that in their marketing efforts as a way to, like I said, reach the right people in a time when they're ready, you know, to get that type of information. Because I think that, like we were talking about a little earlier, these developing platforms, it's a little bit of the Wild West. Everybody's kind of trying to see what works, and so if you do a great job out of it, if you're a small advertiser, you can kick the butt of a big brand because you're quick, you're trying stuff, and you can just move faster and be more nimble than they are. And so I'll be talking about that. And, you know, anybody who wants to talk to me, you know, since you mentioned barbecue, my dad is a farmer up in Idaho. He raises some of the best grass-fed beef you've ever had. If you want to talk meat and barbecue with me, that'll always pick my interest.
That's fantastic. All right, good to know. How about Mark? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about?
I'm going to be talking about growing campaign as well as managing enterprise-sized campaigns from a global perspective, and really not just from the perspective within the accounts themselves, but also organizationally, what you have to prepare yourself for, having gone through this, you know, from an agency perspective as well as in-house perspective as well. And as for, you know, what piques my interest, honestly, I can talk about PPC all day. It really doesn't. You don't really have to try all that hard to strike up a conversation, as long as it touches on some form of digital marketing. So yeah, looking forward to meet some folks out there.
Excellent. Sounds great. And I'll be speaking about lead generation. I've done a lot of work. I've had a lot of accounts who focus on lead generation, and so talking about how to identify lead quality and some of the different avenues I've used to make sure that we get that right and bring home some you know, quality content for our clients. So I'll be talking a little bit more about that. So we do have some discussion points, and while we're talking about those, I would love for anyone in attendance of our webinar to feel free to complete this poll as well. We have a special offer. You can get a free solutions blueprint where we at Hannafin look at your account and provide an analysis and consultation for accounts that spend $20K or more in a month. And you're welcome to select that, and if you've already done that or you don't need it this time, feel free to say no thanks. But I do have a couple questions, one for each of you really. The first question is, and this is a little specific, so feel free to address it as you will. How many posts should we do in a day on Facebook? So that has to do a little bit with account maintenance and how you build it out and how you go forward with this. What would you say would be, if there's some way to approach how to kind of quantify what you should be doing on a daily basis?
Well, it really depends, I guess. I think if you're looking from a community sense versus, paid advertising sense, but ultimately, I'm going to go back to numbers. It's really the numbers that'll tell you what works for your audience. What works for our audience might be, completely different than what works for yours. I think the better question would be with the type of posts more than anything else. Depending on the social network, it really depends on whether it's imagery or not. But what I would say to that is, for Facebook, what we just generally find is, any posts with images are the ones that resonate the most for us.
Excellent. All right, that sounds good. And then one other question, and this one has to do, let's see. Well, this one, it says, are there any new strategies for turning likes or follows into revenue? So anything that's kind of new or that you've sort of been looking into a little bit more deeply as far as taking people who are already interested in engaging with you and turning into something profitable?
I think that whenever you can get an engaged audience, obviously they engage with you for one reason or perhaps a couple, but there's a primary reason that they engage with your company or brand because you provide a certain service or product. Those same people have different needs in other areas that there's opportunities for partnerships or co-marketing efforts. Just something that I've noticed in helping my dad since we're talking about grass-fed beef, I've got it on the brain. He sells directly from farm to consumer. He doesn't go through any restaurants or any grocery stores, and so the internet's a big thing for him. What he's found with his customer base is that he has a large number of his customers who also homeschool their children. And so people interact with his brand in the sense of, they go to him for high quality meat, but, he would be in a great position to partner or, co-market with, a company that sold homeschool curriculum or materials because for one reason or another, that's a relationship that we've seen in his customer base that could potentially be leveraged in a Facebook sense to monetize a little bit.
Well, that's great. That's, I think, a really good insight is, identifying when there are opportunities to partner with or to, associate with particular brands or other services provided. That's great. Well, I appreciate both of you guys spending a little bit of time talking to me today about your experience in the world of social media, and hopefully all of you in attendance have gotten some good tips and pointers. And obviously these are the kinds of things where if you have questions, you're welcome to follow up with us, follow up with these gentlemen. Let us know how we can help you kind of get more engaged in these different forms of social media. And then of course each of these of course have their own various forms of tech support staff, contact lines, things like that. So I would say if you've got curiosity, if they've piqued your interest as far as advertising in Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other platforms, I'd say look into it some more because, like we've said, this is something that's really going to be moving up and getting bigger over the coming years. So we look forward to hearing what you guys do with your PPC accounts. Feel free to reach out to us again at #ThinkPPC. Otherwise, we will talk to you next time on PPC Hero.